and it's yeah, I think I'll stick with this, doing every other one in English. But yes, still having a cold, but going in the right direction, I guess. Yeah. Oh, actually gotten to a point where I think it's quite obvious that I spend too much time on social media. Well, at least today I think it's been too many hours, but sometimes part of it feels like there's a lot of things that, even though I find well, sometimes at least, find myself to be quite critical of what I engaging in, well, especially on perhaps on YouTube or so, because then it's kind of more of a commitment to watch a longer video, whilst on other platforms it's usually like shorter interactions on. But well, critical is to be very, it's a nice way to describe it, maybe not too accurate. Yeah, if the dopamine kick is not enough, so show something else. But it's still usually, it's just on intuition. It's and if it's just for enjoyment, it's easy for the minutes to add up, even to hours if it's really bad. So it is, I mean, but the problem is that even what I was about to say is that even though I found at times at least try to be critical of what I, not only the time, but what so it's usually like 5 or perhaps 10 to 20 or 15% of the what engaging that feels really like. So if that could be condensed to shorter, like 30 minutes, then it would be nicer, sort of. Perhaps it could be, if I'm more critical of what I engage in, this could be like it could be one way to work around it, because it is, as I said, usually I mean, some type of stimulus or some type of, I mean, some things are nice to engaging, and it's really hard to know what's, like, amusement is okay, it's a good thing sometimes in limited amounts, and of course insightful news or insightful things, and things that keep your motivation up in different fields, and so it's hard to know how much bang for the buck you get for interacting with things, and it's usually something that you just get addicted to in some way, because it's dopamine, I guess. It's at least a hormone, it's chemicals in the brain basically, but I think it's hard to know how much you can, because usually, at least for me, I feel like even that is, well, I think I've been discussing this before. I think people have different, I don't want to say I'm unique in some level, but I feel I am someone who's quite, I had a hard time sort of satisfying myself with things. I mean, most of the things I interact with, even the good things, is on like on a 1 to 10 scale. If I feel like I'm happy if I find some 4, because most is like 2 or lower. it's I have a quite extreme critical view of things. So maybe I'm exaggerating, but it says I'm not satisfied. It's as if, oh, can I at least get on 7 or 8 or something? Even though I can appreciate a lot of things, I really do appreciate it, and I do choose to look at the things that I find engaging or as if I like it, but I mean, it's like in everything, football, like soccer, whatever you call it, European football. It's like it's only World Championship every 4th year. I mean, if that's your highlight. I mean, silly example, but I mean, and it's just the. So I guess one can't be too. I mean, content. Even if there's so much, I guess it's just that you're used to so many things that. And I am, as a person, I mean, when you're doing these type of things, you're seeking fun stuff and you're seeking engaging stuff, interesting things, and perhaps you can't expect to find things that are like that, or I'm just bad at finding them. I don't know, but I'm still there because I'm seeking that and I'm getting it, because otherwise I wouldn't be there. But it's still as if it's like eating a meal of something. You're really hungry, eating a meal of something that's really, really tasty, but you're forced to eat at a third of the speed that what you want to, or something like that. And that's pure torture. At least for me, I didn't like when I remember it from when I was young. I mean, I always considered, like, it was all, if you got sort of, say, an ice cream, you and your friend got an ice cream. I remember it very well. And this is probably, I was not older than 9 years old. I was probably 6 or 7 years old. I was sitting at a, what you call when you're going back and forth, in my what you call lawn, grass lawn at my house, at my, what's it called, the house is grass lawn, anyway, and with a friend, and we're eating ice cream, and or if it's candy, I don't remember, but we had like a limited amount, and I remember I was thinking about that many times before, afterwards, and it's just basically very similar to the mushroom test in some way, but not really. But it was, I've always felt as if, like when people say, my friend said that, well, you should enjoy the food, enjoy the candy or the ice cream by eating it slowly. And for me, that was like, if I wanted that to fast because it was tasty, it was like, to do that was pure torture. So I always did the opposite, because I always eat up my things first. It was torture to see them eating. So I remember hiding my ice cream or my candy, because not as if I don't mean if I intentionally like said that I didn't have anything left, but I remember asking for a while, like, how much do I have left, or something like that. I was like, it wasn't that I wanted to torture that my friend. It was more like I did not want to be tortured because I've eaten it up, and I hate myself to just eat it slowly, because that is pure torture. I can't just like eat this as slowly as they're doing, because that's, I want to just eat it. So I just waited, and so that when he was finished, then I could like gorge into it, because the torture wouldn't be long for him anyway, because I would just eat it up. So I felt that was like where was I? Anyway, just a side note of some sort, but yeah, I was talking about oh, just blanked in my head. Was something about just eating slowly. Yeah, that's sort of my. So I wished I could save, sort of. If I could save my experience in. If I knew I was going to do 30 minutes of social media, I would like to save everything for the last 5 minutes, but I can't because it's not. I really seeking those highs, and I'm found, even though I feel I want to view myself as a very disciplined person, but when it comes to social media lately, or even like for years, it's hard to distinguish what's sort of okay and what's not okay and good. But I'm guessing that I'm way too much now, actually. But what was I thinking about? Yeah, and especially when it's not like, yeah, that was what I was focused about on. I'm, as a person, I think I'm seeking highs, and even though that was what I was going to take, even though I'm quite disciplined, or extremely disciplined in some areas, especially have been, and I've tried to sort of loosen up that a bit, because I think I was sort of too focused on the discipline side and not focused on other stuff. In some areas you can develop more discipline for sure, even early on, but mostly I was like classical stuff like studies, training. That's my thing. That's like there's no limit basically how disciplined I could be. The only thing that would stop me from doing it would be if it would be like health issues, or not even that actually, but if it was like I would, the short term effect would be like I wouldn't be able to, like, for example, sleep. If I couldn't sleep, I would probably not be able to learn things. So that's I could force myself to not sleep and just continue studying, but that would probably be bad for learning. So I wouldn't be up late studying, because that was a choice. But anyway, so even though I see myself as very disciplined, I also see myself as extremely, like, I think I'm quite strong. I'm not sure, but I think I have quite strong, what's it called in English? What we call it, like kickar. I don't know if it's seeking kicks of pleasure. I don't know if that's used in the English language in some way, but it's like peaks. You're really seeking those highs in whatever it is. That's why it's extreme. Like I hate drinking small amounts of coffee. Even though I feel the thing, even if I focus on something else. But if I know that I can get more, I would just like to get 3 cups. I can't just go take a cup and then I know my coffee will peak in like 3 hours if I take a cup of coffee. Like most people go there in the morning, and then it goes like 1 or 2 hours, and then they can take another cup, then they take another cup, and then suddenly they have 5 cups or something. Then I mean, during that time, or during those 4 to 5 hours, I mean, not that much have been. If the what's it called in English? Halving, cutting the amount. English sucks. Cutting amount by 50% in 6 hours. I don't know if that's always the case, but I heard that's an average. It could be 2 to 10 hours, I've heard, but that's an average. Then it's like, then you're peaking, then you're basically still peaking on the 5th cup anyway. So why just, yeah, for sure, if you take, it's sort of equivalent with taking 4 at once in the morning. So why just why yeah, for sure you can postpone it, but in my world it's like torture to do that. If I can't get everything now, I'd rather like either wait until that time later in the day and take it then, but then I've lost the morning hours anyway, and it will be still be my system later on, and I have trouble sleeping if I do that. So so for me it's like I take those 4 cups in the morning, or whatever it's like. I say cups because if you amount it in like small cups, then it would usually be like 4 cups. If you take a big cup, maybe I wouldn't. Depends on what you mean by a cup, but I say 4 when I mean so small amount. So now I've cut that out of my life, I suppose. I don't know. I usually I don't think I work the best with coffee actually. It's as if I don't know if it's the training amount. I train quite hard from time to time, and if it's or other issues, but I think it's best to cut coffee out of my, and one reason is probably that I think it's pure torture to stay in low amounts. It's easier to cut it out completely, because it might still be beneficial to take 1 cup in the morning, a little cup in the morning, and then get the positive effects. But it's so easy for me to just know that that's the line, and if it really is, and especially if it's I don't know. Anyway, the point is that I think I seek those highs quite. I'm not sure, it's hard to, I actually think this is a really important subject to understand also how you react. And one of the reasons that I think this is not just theory, I actually did a DNA test that said I was more, thrill seeking was the word. Yeah, cirka kick, in Swedish kicks, thrills, I guess it is in English, highs and thrills, like fast drive. Like a classical example is driving fast with a car and those type of things. I know, for example, Zlatan Ibrahimovic is read his book for, it's like a long time ago, 15 years ago perhaps, no, not quite, and he really had that tendency to really want to seek those type of thing, and most men have that, and females too. But I think usually I'm not considering myself to be that, but the DNA tests show that I am. It just happens to be that I'm doing most of the time a really prudent. I'm very disciplined and prudent, and like, for example, I know what is a high percentage of me, or it's a percentage of me. I could die if I drove like really fast, so I don't see it, and it's even the acceleration that is the fun part anyway. So prefer to stop the car in appropriate places and just but so seeking those highs is someone I actually think I have a quite strong, and I'm in general I sort of feel myself hard to satisfy myself in stuff. I'm quite picky on activities and stuff. I think that's a quite accurate description of how I work, and I think it's important to know how we work. I mean, in that respect, why? I mean, I don't know. I just. But I think the thing about the caffeine, I thought about that way other people are doing it differently. I mean, perhaps they don't think about sleep as much, but to just take those kind of small. We have a sort of coffee machine at the work, and they have those sort of different things. You have a cafe latte, and you have and I always find it hard to understand why they take those kind of sort of mild, low caffeine things. I mean, that's probably better, but for me, like going to the coffee machine and not take, like you have 3 levels. One, the standard level is like the lowest level, and then you can add extra. So it's more extra strong, and you can add extra strong. Like for me, it's, I don't know. It's like it's hard for me to go there and not doing that, and you actually can get 2 cups in 1 cup. Like the machine puts out a small amount, but the cups are a little bit bigger. They're not big, but there still fits 2 of those in those cups, and I'll still go for 2 in that, and the extra strong on both of those. It's hard for me to not. Why is not everyone else doing that? Why are they just like, do they not feel the same, like, oh, that would be amazing, or are they just like, perhaps they reach the same conclusion as I have, that like you can't sleep if you do it, or they get sort of other issues, like sort of some people can't, when they have too much coughing, like their heart bumping, or they're sort of can be like they shaking and stuff when they feel so uncomfortable with it. For me, it's I don't know. I don't think I've experienced that really, but it's after a while, it's like the effect is, I don't know, it's not giving you too much more, and yeah, I just trying to understand my behavior in connection to that, if that's because I'm more sort of seeking highs more, seeking those, like, I mean, I see, this would be an argument for me, like being more prone to sort of drug abuses or those type of things, and if that's true, first I don't know for sure that's true, that I am more, and I don't know if I would be more addicted to drugs and stuff, but caffeine is actually a drug, and to say that you get pig and alert, sort of like pig is alert in Swedish. What's the English? Yes, just alert and waking up sort of with the coffee. Like for me, it's just, yeah, for sure. But it's really a drug for me in some sense. It's like really feel good, and of course, it's not the same thing as taking real drugs, but it's still like. I truly feel amazing, and I usually said that I almost as if I prefer that to alcohol if I just want to feel really good. It's such a usually that's the common thing, at least in Sweden, is we say you take it because you want to feel alert and just focused and like sort of wake up in the morning, and but yeah, I think that's 10% and 10% true, and of course you take it for you so you can focus and stuff, but mostly it just feels you feel really good. Yeah, I don't try to figure out if I am more like that, because it's interesting. It's really a biological sort of trait this was actually in conjunction with a DNA test I took, that it said, and this was actually more specific female and male traits, but this trait was actually associated for both sexes, that you could be thrill seeking, and that I happen to be that, and it could be actually associated more with what's the word, not being unfaithful, being with another woman or another man and so forth. But it's, of course you can't generalize, but just because you're like for example, just because you have more hunger as a person, like there are genes for that, doesn't mean that you will be fat, because it depends on how much you train, or it depends on how much discipline you have, and so forth. And so, but yes, and that's not strange, because if you have hard time being like in general being satisfied with stuff, and just seeking thrills, of like, it's the same thing like with the car. You take a calculated sort of decision. Will I go so fast with my car that I risk dying, or will I not? Will I what's the word, object to the impulse for another woman just because she happens to be attractive, or not? That's the decision. So you can have a stronger impulse than other people, but you still have control. But of course, thrill-seeking behavior, as they call it, is I guess it's I would guess it's associated with risk-taking behavior also. So that's why that's why it surprised me that they actually had it for women too, because it's usually something that you see in men, more risk-taking behavior. There are they have two things for both sexes, but that was the only thing that was common. That one thing, other thing for men, and another thing for women that were sort of sexually related, like your gender related to your sex. So there's two things, and one of them were common, like in both places, if you were thrill-seeking or not. So I don't know why they put that in there, but for both sexes. But yeah, anyway. So, but when it comes to alcohol, for example, like for me, I enjoy drinking a lot when I do drink, but it's like I almost never feel an urge to drink alcohol during my, like for example, being alone or stuff. It isn't. But maybe it's because I don't drink it daily like I drink coffee. I don't know. Maybe I would feel the same with that if I drank it daily. But anyway. But yeah, in general, I find life to be like, yeah. But I'm still not sure if this is an accurate description, but the coffee thing makes me wonder sometimes. It could be multiple reasons, and to why that's the way I work, but or why I had that behavior, but I'm also very one way to make it harder to distinguish how this is that I am, perhaps even more than thrill-seeking, although I do think I'm quite much of that, perhaps even more, also very prudent and think things through a lot, and like to quite, I think, at quite extreme degree, and that counteracts that. Even though I have that impulse, it latches out sort of in different domains of life where I not have it fully sort of pinned down or understood exactly if it's a good or bad behavior. Then I usually, especially when I'm in a period of life, or have been recent years in a period of life where I've been sort of trying to backing off the prudent, or at least the perfectionist side, and go more like do things that's fun, or do stuff that's engaging. Like for example, when it comes to knowledge, I found like going after interest, even though that's not at all times a thrill seeking in itself. It can be if you're drinking coffee, for example, or something, or if you really find something that's interesting, and that maybe sort of explore more of those things that you could be sort of thrill seeking, but I don't know. It is hard to know what's. I mean, most people need things that they enjoy in doing, and that's so. But I don't think I'm the only one who struggles with social media and trying to keep it in limited amounts. It's really like, yeah, if you're doing it a lot, I guess it's bad. But I also think it's like, if I should feel better myself, I can say that most people are doing that, and they're also doing Netflix for all things, all those. I don't have any single sort of HBO, Netflix, or anything like that. I don't think it's like YouTube is my friend. It's always been it. Like there's sort of it's not through a production sort of cycle, so forth. If I happen to want to use something, so I'm serious. Well, I did it back in the days when there were other methods for that, and now it's not that much anymore. Yeah, I don't. Perhaps I think I should limit it a bit more, but it's hard to draw the line. There are different apps, like there are X, and it's YouTube, and it's Instagram and Facebook. Although Instagram and Facebook don't get that much of attention from me, but and so it's bad though that you're bad. I mean, it would be, even though there's a lot of engaging things, I don't know, but maybe I have myself to blame, but it seems like the algorithm is not putting forth stuff that's like extremely intellectually engaging, or I mean there is a lot of that content, but it's like I perceive it to be like 10% sometimes in the feed. There's a lot of things that I enjoy, and it's hard to remember exactly, but it feels there's a lot of sort of entertainment and just sort of sometimes political things, and there's a lot of, in the current discussion worldwide about a lot of stuff. There is a lot of politics involved, so it's hard to get around that. But more on a deeper level, it's as if, on one hand, I think it's I blame myself for not searching for it, but at the same time, I feel as if it's not popping up enough. And I don't know why that's. Maybe it's just because it's rare, and that is what it is. Like for example, why is it not showing Steven Pinker things more? Why don't I stumble into that more? I do stumble into similar things like that, like Steven Pinker things. Like for example, just taking a scientist, but because I find myself to be someone who, when I do see something interesting, like for example a post, I would interact with, or at least like it. I don't know how that works and why it's working that way. Same with YouTube, I guess, but now I happen to be in a period where I just sort of quite focused on just those Eddie Hall, Brian Shaw, and Thor. What's his last name? Thor. Thor Hjalmarsson Björnsson, I think his name. Of the strongman guys. I really think it's. I'm just into that sort of. I think it's. Sometimes I think some people might look at it, find it sort of shy, and almost not shy, but sort of. But for me, it's just that's how men should do. That's what men should do when they're sort of doing stuff in their spare time, when they're sort of doing. It's just sound, it's exercise, and it's fucking manly. It's. I mean, not every person is obliged to think that's fun or so, but I think the world would be a better place if more people, more men, especially, thought that to be really fun. Because if you take football, for example, that's soccer. I mean, like if you're putting the American name, like European classic football. I like that sport a lot. I think perhaps the most fun sport ever. I really do think so. It is. And part of that could be that it's a cultural thing. I played it a lot when I was a child and so forth. And part could be that it is a really good big game, and that's why it's but also big. Probably the biggest. I think it's the biggest. Me in my mouth. Biggest game in the world, sport in the world, and I think it's like extremely fun. I think one reason for that, by the way, I think it's just the similarity with the field and the battlefield, and the similarity with sort of hunting with the men going for a hunt to catch a prey, like strategic go. I think that's obviously like evolutionarily, it just feels right. You're in a field and you're going for a goal, basically, and you something throws into the goal. Now the goal is a goal, and it's not an animal, and it's not a spear, or an axe. It's a football. It's quite odd though that you're doing it with your feet, and that is much more of a game than handball and basket, but at least in Sweden, but or I mean in Europe, or most parts of the world, I guess. But it's still like it's odd though that is with a foot, but I guess it's like sort of, if I just imagine, let's take the silly manly. The example of sort of Vikings just chatting about something, just kicking something. It's kind of a nonchalant thing. It's just like that, and it's also sort of a skill thing. Can you do it with your feet, not your hands? It's sort of what could you call it? Nonchalant, sort of cocky thing that you could do it with your feet, and not just your. And it's also sort of kicking someone. I suppose I was about to say, but it's already something quite aggressive about that as well, and maybe that's why football, despite being a quiet, you can't be really rough, and you're not allowed to basically tackle people in the way that you do in hockey, for example, and that's perhaps the worst thing about football, that it has not that sort of physical element in the same way, even though could be quite rough. I mean, if you're strong in the football and you stand there, and if you've seen, for example, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, you're standing there with the ball and just with three guys just trying to take, and he's just big and just bumping into them in some way, so that they are just, and apart from just much skill with the ball, it's of course can be a huge strength to be actually strong and big in the sport, but which he is compared to many other football athletes. But what I was about to say was that it's sort of weird that football is so big when it's not what it's lacking is sort of that, I guess, or like the more strongman side of things. Like what I'm thinking about is like in the hunting stage, or when sort of there were Vikings and stuff, they had those sort of games, or they had how high could you jump, and they would do wrestling type of things. And even in Athens and Greek, like Spartans, or they had sort of wrestling thing, and it was quite a tough life though, but it was still sort of part of just being this man-to-man wrestling. Or I don't think they do boxing. Wrestling is, I think wrestling is sort of older thing, but they would all do all those type of, and I guess Olympics and a thing that comes from that. But that sort of competition and different things, it's speaking of that, I think the Maya Indians had a sport where there it's like tennis, or it's like volleyball, sort of like volleyball, but they're not only allowed, I don't think they can take it with their hands, only used to take their own body. It's just quite rough ball, and I think they were sort of damaged by playing this sport, their bones or stuff, but I don't remember really. So yeah, their sports have been a long thing for a long while, but yeah, I think that's in general, I think it's a really good thing to be engaged in sport and stuff, but it's also having a gang doing that type of stuff together. It's amazing, really. I, like most guys, go to the, or most, but many guys, I usually go to the gym alone. Maybe yeah, basically always. It's just my routine, and yeah, for sure that's perhaps the way it should be sometime. But if you want to focus, but I still think it's probably better to go like a group and stuff. And but in my earlier days, when I got that habits, and that's probably the reason that I feel so comfortable doing lots of stuff in the gym, especially those basic, like all the deadlift stuff that most people, perhaps if you're not used to it, don't know how to do. I think my technique is probably fine, but I'm not sure at all times. But I feel like I feel extreme, like I've been doing this so long, so I almost never hurt myself. So but that comes from the habit when I was in the teenage period doing athletics, and then I was with the group and did that for years. And and just pushing yourself and your teammates to new weights and stuff, it's really and it's not like, you don't have that really in football stuff. It's not the same thing. It's not that raw like strength things, and at some level it's fine. At the same time, I feel like, for me personally, it's like a mix. I would like to have more of a mix of that than just doing football and just doing, because I appreciate, as I said, football is probably the most fun sport I know, or perhaps, I don't know, but I feel it's extremely fun. Actually, basketball is actually really we did do that for warm-up. Should bubble about sport on this video, but it happened to be like that. I find that to be very fun too, but yeah, anyway, what was I about to say? And I don't think it's a coincidence that the things that I looked forward to at most when I was doing track and field and athletics, in my teenage period, and my whole teenage period, basically, actually, yeah, and quite intense. And what I looked forward to the most was actually during the winter we warmed up with basketball at least 2 training sessions. Warmed up with that, not when we did the gym and stuff, but otherwise 2 or 2, yeah, 3, I guess 3 times a week for almost, I think, half an hour sometimes, 15 minutes at least, but half an hour sometimes. I don't remember, but yeah, I guess what is, yeah, 20 minutes, perhaps 20 to 25 minutes. We first run and then stretched and then played, so perhaps then it was 25 minutes. Anyway, that and the strength sessions, that and the strength when we went to the gym was actually the part that I find the most fun. And that's perhaps not a coincidence that basketball is a bigger sport than say athletics, track and field, and that going to the gym is something that people do more today than going to a track and field arena or something, because I happen to find it more fun. And the reason I started that sport was actually sort of a coincidence, or I was actually doing gymnastics when I was really young, and I had another friend doing track and field, and this was when I was sort of 11 years old, I think, and I thought that's quite similar, so went from gymnastics to track and field instead, because what's similar is still this sort of Olympic athlete, like overall athletic vibe. I don't know what it's called. It was not like individual gymnastic, it was sort of, you're doing it in a group gymnastics or something like that. Anyway, and of course played football also, but I also quit playing football. And so I really like to be extremely focused and stuff, so I guess that explains why I still appreciated the sport to some degree. It was still, and I also like that sort of exposing yourself to extreme amounts of pain is for me something that it feels so, it's really the marshmallow brain going haywire, like the more pain you can handle, the more you can push yourself, the more you can just accept and choose to take even higher amounts of pain by pushing yourself harder. It's like, it's such strong, when it's ingrained in the mind, that you associate that with a reward afterward, even though it never came sadly for me. I never really gotten so good at, and I think that, by the way, that's a reason why it's good to work smart and not only hard, because you can work too hard and you can work in a dumb way. Like for me, for example, I don't know the actual reason, but I think I would have been better off not pushing myself that way. But perhaps I could have still gotten away with it if I had slept better and stressed and more limited, I don't know. Or it's just the genes, I mean, shouldn't delve into that too much now, but I mean, and then even if you have genes for something like training and exercise, after a while, people who are the worst or not the average, they're selected out and they just stop because they find out that they're not that good at it, and then they quit. And just how much even doesn't matter how much you want to believe that it's about what you think you can do, and it's about the mindset. I mean, if you don't have the genes for it, if you're too short or too skinny or whatever it is for a certain type of sport, I mean, genes determines a lot. And it's not only that those outer sort of things. It's also like how much you respond to training and exercise. Like for me, for example, when I found, if I remember correctly, there's some stuff about like how much you're responding to exercise. There's things like how much you need recovery, and it's things like how much blood flow. And I had quite good on stuff, those type of stuff, but it was just not like extraordinary. I guess it was like really, I don't know. You just get an overview, and most of those tests are quite careful not portraying it as sort of better or worse, because they don't want people to feel bad about themselves. But in one test you could like see the really on the genes, you had that gene and that gene, but you did not have that and that gene and that. And sometimes it was a trade-off between endurance and strength, and sometimes it was just simply that if you didn't have it, you would probably don't know that extreme like facilitator for endurance or strength, for example. And so yeah, so anyway, I was talking about pushing yourself. Yeah, why I find I don't care what I'm talking about now. At least I'm just keep it going. So yeah, track and field. Why I liked it, what I liked it about it was that extreme sort of self-focused. It's only yourself you're responsible for. So I've set off on that negative thing with track and field and those type of individual sports. It's that it's not a cooperative element, but at least you can train in a group, and that's nice. And that was probably why I didn't find it extremely engaging as well, because it's also quite boring to be so self-focused. It's a bit so, and in addition to that, not having those exceptional perhaps genes, or not having the recovery for that, was something that I was needed more. I don't remember how much I responded to training. Perhaps I'm just sort of average how much I respond to training, but I remember I had a higher need for recovery, which is of course not good. I mean, if you have good recovery, that's probably maybe there's some positive side of it as well. I don't know, but I also have sort of, if I remember correctly, quite sort of good on blood flow, and sort of it's as if this really goes hand in hand quite well with how I experienced it, because it was as if, well, perhaps my recovery wasn't perhaps astounding, and I didn't have sort of extreme responding. But if I remember correctly, when it's at least about endurance and stuff, there was some stuff that sounded as if I had like maintaining things continually during quite hard endurance settings, even though I myself like felt as if it was the worst. I would never, for me that's pure hell what I did, but it was as if my body sort of could handle it. I had sort of genes for handling it. I could be maintain myself. I could, it wasn't as if, it could sort of, I was quite good in some way. I just could, but the reward for that training was not perhaps perfect, because I had just averaged responding to training, and on top of that also longer recovery. But I don't know for sure. It could also be that I stressed too much. That's probably the worst part. I had all other issues.
I was always focused on studying, but I don't know. It's really hard to know why you didn't excel as you wanted to, but maybe the main reason was that I didn't really care. The only thing that mattered for me, of course, I wanted to be the best when I did that, but even though if I had been, I mean, it was still sort of quite empty for me. I had a period of quite extreme passion during a short period, some years after I had quitted football. When I played FIFA, I was like, I want to be a football player, and for I think maybe it was just months or if it was years, but I found that was what I want to do in my life. I want to be a football player. It was quite short, and it was after I think a summer playing FIFA, perhaps too much, but I never ever had that about athletics. I never dreamed about doing that. I just had that natural impulse to want to be the best when you're training in the group and going to championships and stuff, but I never excelled, and why did I get into that? I had to remember. I guess yeah, I was talking about that sport and manliness, I guess. Doing things that are constructive for. This is, of course, sensitive today when it's all about speaking a lot about gender and all those type of things, but there is stuff that are constructive to just develop sound masculinity, and that's just going to the gym and just perhaps scream a bit and just move heavy stuff. But yeah. Yeah. That was quite dark, but who cares? And it's not as dark as it seems when I'm in here. I still see stuff, of course, but can't see that on camera recording. So yeah, sports will be like, sport is such a good thing in many ways, because both when it comes to training and health and social stuff, I mean, that's the only thing that's bad with going to the gym, I guess, is that it's not social. It's not you're not forced to socialize in it. Otherwise, you go to the gym and going for, and the same thing with going for a run. And most people, they might, I mean, I think almost every child, at least when I was here in Sweden, I think it's at least for men, it's probably different for females, but for women, female, you say that, female, women, anyway, for the XY part, it's probably is true, and for the XX, no, I shouldn't. I'm just kidding here, but referring to the biological, is it chromosomes, XY? Yeah, it is. But men, I think, at least where I grew up here in Sweden, Stockholm, I think every single guy was involved in a sport. and usually was more than one. Perhaps for some people even 5 sports, and they change them back and forth between different ones. But yeah, for sure. I mean, to be a standard was, as I remember it, being on 3 sports. I mean, every single guy. If you did not played football sometime in your life, then you were probably somewhat odd, almost. I mean, not every person had, and you were not odd if you hadn't, but this possibility that you were somewhat odd was if you had not played football. Then you might quit for sure. Many people had quitted when they were quite young, as like between 10 and 13 years old, probably like 50% of those who played stopped, or perhaps even 70 to 80%, I don't know, but at least played for 2, 3, 4 years. It was like for me, it was probably, now when I think about it, quite long. I remember I was 6 years old, something like that, and I must have quitted when I was perhaps 11, 10, 11. Well, I think. Yeah, 11. But that's for football, and I also had gymnastics, and other friends I had hockey, and it was golf, tennis. I don't know how that's in other countries, not in, but where I grew up, it was like every single guy had at least 2 to 3 sports that they had at least tested or were active in. I was never active more than 2 at once at the same time, but and that's something that's really like good, I think. But this issue is that you stop, and it's not that you shouldn't. It's just that if you're going to exercise anyway, I don't know. There should be some sort of. Going alone to the gym, which is what so many people do. I think when it comes to like doing physical exercises, there's something about it that is really social. Even like those solitary movements that it is to just pumping weights. It's such it's like just thinking sort of Vikings, but you can just take farmers, or well, perhaps not farmers is a little bit different, but if you think more about cultures and tribes, at least in Sweden, and I guess are also Germanic tribes and perhaps Celtic tribes, I think that having that sort of training exercises than just jumping and competing and wrestling and all those type of things. I think that's really sound thing to do throughout your whole life, from your, I think, I don't know, 6, 7 years old, just wrestling on a weekly or if not daily basis, and lifting weights and doing sort of strategic games also. Or strategic, I mean, when I say I just mean playing field games, sort of similar to the Savannah or the battle scenery. I think that's especially for men, but perhaps for women too. I'm not sure about women, but for men, I think that should be sort of mandatory almost. I mean, you can't force people to do things, but it should be something that's so nice that you really it doesn't have to be mandatory because everyone wants to do it. And you could say, what's the problem with all the free choices that are today? I mean, I think it's a cultural thing. Like, there's a lot of things that are sound, for example, at least in Sweden. I guess I don't know how it is in other countries when it comes to this. But the thing is, when you're getting older, like, we live in a society where there's a lot of opportunities to do stuff and to find stuff, but earlier in, it's not what's the word, instinctual for us to seek sort of new communities and stuff. I mean, there are parts of us that is for that, for sure, and some people are really outgoing and stuff, but I mean, usually we're sort of stuck in our ways, and usually we just have our habits. So if you lose a habit, like for example going to training session with people and in a group, and I mean, that could be a sound thing to break with that group and find a new one. And so if you're not feeling as if that's the perfect place to be, but it's not necessarily the case that you're going to seek a new one. Like for me, for example, I didn't, and that's what most people happen to do. They quit their sport and then they're just going to the gym and going for a jog, and they might compensate. Someone might get a friend that they go to the gym with, or friends that they go to the gym with, or someone like might go for a run for some time with people they know and stuff. But there is really many people just doing alone stuff, and I don't think that's good, really. And but the problem is, like, and it's also finding a group that is like, the problem here is that we're really super social animals, and we're supposed to be in a sort of clan or a group or a hunter-gatherer sort of clan, and just doing stuff and knowing each other very, very well, and doing sort of always like this good example, the wrestling and throwing what's it called, stumps, or sort of throwing stones, or like lifting stones and stocks and wooden stuff. It's just so raw and so manly, and so good for the, dare I say it, masculine psyche to just engage in that type of stuff. Just get out in this. Just imagine getting out in the woods, couple of guys, finding stones. Who can lift the biggest stones? Who can carry the biggest? I mean, for some people that might sound silly, but I always remind, I listened to a terrific podcast years ago. We're talking about a thread in Flashback. Flashback is a forum, the only forum that perhaps in Sweden that is it is Swedish forum. I think it's only Swedish, and it's perhaps the only remnant of a masculine strain tradition from the not yet cultural spoiled internet. Otherwise, no, I shouldn't be so negative, but and yes, there's a lot of unsound reasons or unsound attitudes on that platform, but if it had not been for that platform, and I have not used it a lot, I have used it for some time, and I do think I had 1 or 2 accounts that I started, but I've never really engaged in it other than just reading, and it's free to read for everyone. And yes, of course, accumulating during the years, I've read on that platform from period to period, and it is interesting to read on that platform, and I really like it from time to time. But I don't feel because I'm not reading there myself, but read other people's materials. I don't feel as if I qualify as someone who has been like extremely involved in it, but I have read a lot on it, and it's actually the reason I searched for that education I did search for, which was like the most top level education in Sweden. The only education that is sort of elite, at least the only school that have sort of an elite, like there are other schools, especially different programs at schools that are some ones that I think there are a few ones who are even slightly harder to get into, but this school was like really small school, and it's a Swedish school that really hard to get into, and the main reason that I searched for it finally, despite from many other factors, just wanting to doing the best with my grades, and my dad was quite thought of that as something, well, that would be not impossible, but if you get in that was really something that he thought would be amazing. But when I just made the decision, like what should I search for, I mean, reading on Flashback was the reason. That was the reason that like, who would you, yeah, and you compare that to sort of engineering educations, stuff like that, and I don't know if I made the right decision there and then, but I do not regret it at all, even though I didn't complete that, because I found there were better ways to get ahead in life, much better ways, just because I happen to understand that education is not something that's bound to universities anymore. It's basically not free, but university does not have monopoly on education and learning anymore with the internet, but if you know how to use it, which I claimed I didn't know. Sorry for the sound here, but anyway, so yeah, that forum was like, and that was a quiet, cocky tone there as well, but really engaging to read. Yeah, for sure, some assholes, but also some people that just were quite fun to follow or read about. But anyway, I read their comments and thoughts. But why did I mention that? Why did I mention Flashback? I don't remember. I was talking about sports and lifting weights and engaging and stuff. Yeah, doing exercise, and then don't go into the gym alone. I mean, that's all those type of things, like going. Yeah, I think we need to be more like how it was. Yeah, that's the thing. I was listening to a podcast where some guy were discussing a thread on Flashback, where some I'd start a thread that was like something like, don't you want to just get out in the woods and dig a big hole? And this is not implying like wanting to take your life. It was quite the opposite. Like, so that was sort of the initial question. Like, don't you just feel like going? I think this is at least how it was described and how I remember they were talking about it in the pod. Do you just want to go out in the woods and dig a big hole? And that thread happened to, if I remember correctly from the pod, happened to be like a huge thing, like or at least a lot of people commented on it and thought it was like an extremely good idea. Just get out in the woods and dig a big hole and see how many people you can get into this, and just pair up with some friends and just see how big a fucking hole you can dig. And I don't know if probably not with your hands, but just with some tools. I mean, call me a toxic man, but that's a fucking masculine thing to do. I mean, it's just digging holes in the ground. I mean, it's amazing. Lifting stones with big sticks and wood and stuff and throwing them and digging holes. I mean, that's what we're paid for. I mean, it's as a physical exercise, see what you accomplish, just trying to build houses. I mean, that's the next step. This is what we're built for. This is what we like to do. That way, farm life, I guess, is quite similar to that. It's just that the repeated, like this, doing the new stuff thing. I think that's the nice thing. Like, and that's probably why nomads, which we've been like in our historical past many times, go from place to place, Neanderthals, was always an issue of building up stuff, new stuff, and just putting sticks and rocks and stuff on the ground is building. But